How annoyed do you get when priorities change? Or when there's a new strategy and there's yet another reorg? Change is all around us, and you'll have heard this before. The pace of change just keeps increasing. Today we'll be talking about how you adapt, and if you have a team, how you help them to adapt to new priorities as circumstances change, or new tasks that need to be done, or when the business requirements change. As usual, we're asking you to stop the video right here. Ask yourself some questions and write some notes. Be honest. How do you adapt to change? If you work with a team, how do you help them adapt? Would you describe yourself as having a flexible mindset? And if you're thinking change is part of everyday life, we still want you to reflect and consider how you deal with it versus the other parts of your working life that don't change. Welcome back. What did you learn from that reflection? Maybe you're someone who loves change and just can't understand why others struggle. If so, then there's something for you to learn about how to support others, such as being more patient. Maybe you are the one who has some resistance to new approaches or a change of priorities. Either way, we'll offer you a technique to help you become more adaptable and for you to help others in the same way. It's also a useful technique to think of when you or a colleague find yourselves stuck on a question, unsure of what to do next. Whenever you're stuck, it's really helpful to have a change of perspective. See, here it's number 6. But if you look at it another way, you can see alternative points of view, and that provides options. So here it is, number 9.
The simple, although not always as effective way to do this, is to ask key questions to have people think from another perspective. So for example, Jenny, I understand that you're in a situation where you've got a budget of 50,000, but your current calculations suggest you're going to spend 90,000. So imagine that you're your finance director, I think she's called Shamila. What would she suggest?
She'd send me straight back to the client and she'd say, think of 3 levels of service agreement and put those 3 levels in front of the client.
Interesting. And you mentioned the client. So what do you think the client would suggest?
No, she's a toughie. I think she'd be a bit upset, but she's really invested in one element of this project. And actually for that element, I think she'd be prepared to pay a little bit extra, so I think that that would be a point of negotiation.
Great. So my next questions might be, what have you learnt from this and what would you want to do? So you can see where we're coming from here and what the idea is. There's actually another way that's much more effective, although a little bit more difficult. We call this the 3 chairs challenge. We often introduce teams to this when a project is blocked or the team is struggling to decide on the best way forward. And you can do this on your own or with a colleague who is struggling too. We're going to imagine you're helping a colleague. The first chair always represents the person we're trying to help move forward to increase their adaptability in this case. Each of the other chairs represents a different perspective on the topic at hand. As specific as possible, preferably a specific named individual. For example, you might choose someone from a different department who is involved in the issue, or maybe the CEO. Alternatives might include the customer's perspective, or suppliers, or shareholders, or a completely neutral perspective. You can choose your options depending upon the circumstances, and actually you can have more than 3 chairs as well. The process of the 3 chairs challenge is to describe the situation and to consider the options from each of the different perspectives, in each case sitting in the new chair and trying to sit in the other person's shoes. If you're helping a colleague, then you can use your coaching skills to ask questions and point out what you hear to help your colleague find a way forward. Okay, so Jenny, explain the issue you've got to me from your own perspective, and as describing it, name 2 other people who were involved.
Okay, I costed a project at 50 grand, sold it to the client, they said yes, and now I've gone back, recosted it, and I really think it's 90 grand, so that's a 40 grand difference, and I'm really scared. Two other people, Sharmila, our finance director, Joe, the client.
Great, thanks. So what I want you to do now is to imagine that you are Sharmila, your finance director. And this chair here represents Sharmila. So move into that space, sit down, and think of yourself as literally being Sharmila. Just think about how she sits, how she might look at you. And this is you, this represents you, Jenny, now. Okay, so Sharmila, when you hear about this, what advice would you give Jenny?
Well, firstly, I'd say to her, how could you do this? But then I'd say, look, there's always a way around these things. You can go back to the client and face up to the music and renegotiate. So you can identify all the features of the project and put a cost against each of those features, and you can ask the client quite honestly, what features do you value and what features do you want to pay extra for? So that's, yeah, I'd say that to Jenny.
Thanks, Sharmila. What else? What other advice might you give her? What feedback?
Okay, I'd say, you got it, girl. You're a great negotiator. You can do this.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sharmila. Now, would you move to that chair and be Joe, the client that you mentioned? And again, think of how Joe talks with you, how Joe sits. How is Joe?
Mad as hell.
So, Joe, you've just heard about this. What's
Yeah.
your reaction? What do you want Jenny to do?
Man, well, firstly, I am really disappointed. Super, super, super disappointed. This should not have happened. I chose you because you made a proposal. It was clear that we had limited finance, and it was clear what I was expecting. You knew that. So how could this come about? Sorry, did you ask me what I'm supposed to say to her? And
So what advice, yeah?
What
What do
advice?
you want her to do now?
Well, firstly, be transparent. Show me everything. Show me how you got to this position. Show me what are the new things in your understanding of this project that we didn't have at the beginning. Treat me like you're equal, so don't shilly-shally with this. You know, we're in this together. And I think that's really important now. You've got to re-earn my trust, and the way you'll do that is by being fully transparent.
Brilliant. And in addition to that transparency, anything else you need from her?
Yeah, there's a key point about this project. It's a quality issue, and it's really important. I need to show other stakeholders in my organisation that we're going to deliver on that. So actually, I need your help managing people that are behind me. So actually, I can't carry the communication of this for you, so you're going to have to step up. I'll support you, but you're going to have to take the flak, not me.
Brilliant. Come back here. Come back and be Jenny. Jenny. So Jenny, we did this quite quickly. We could have spent more time doing it. We heard Sharmila suggest that you should go back to the client, give options, suggest different ways of doing it, and she clearly had confidence in you. And we heard Joe talk about being annoyed and saying that can be addressed through transparency and through helping Joe manage other people. What's your learning? What's your takeaway from this?
So I'm quite affected by this. I feel quite moved. I'm not scared, but I feel like I know a path forward. I loved the fact that Sharmila thinks I'm a great negotiator. I don't think that I am, so that gave me confidence. But I really understood, so I can understand why Joe's mad at me. I'm mad at me too. But I also understand that key to this is helping Joe with her internal stakeholders. And she really needs me to step up and communicate. And I think if I do that, she'll help with the budget.
The power of this exercise comes from imagining you are these other people. Moving chairs really helps people to do this. So before closing for the day, take a problem you have. Force yourself to develop 3 very different perspectives. Even on your own, you might try standing in different physical positions. Write down what you learn. I look forward to hearing how you get on.